Hello and welcome back. It is week 85 on Out on That Line. I'm Geoff with my co-host Alex. Alex, how you doing this week, buddy?
I'm over here feeling a little Russian nostalgia, Jeff. Just a little bit of, I'm getting the hint of those glory days because we've got something a little different planned for today.
We do, and I completely concur on the nostalgia factor because this was a trip down memory lane, and all I could think about was what Sarah said. And of course, yeah, you like that? You like
Oh,
that?
man. That was good. I also have a lot to say about that one.
So the album is Plans by Death Cab For Cutie, and this one came out in 2005, and we were all over this bad boy when it came out back then. I've listened to this album consistently since then. I don't even know how many times, like dozens and dozens of times I've listened to this album. I mean, maybe even in triple digits at this point. I don't know, but we listened to it a lot, pretty much every time we hung out for a long time that year.
Yeah, it's to the point where, like an MK Ultra victim, I started listening to this, and then, like, as soon as it started, I stood up to get my keys and start driving to your house. Like, it's so embedded in that very specific place and time for us, for our friend group, for a very specific combination of the friend group that, like, doesn't necessarily exist anymore. You know, people come and go.
Yeah.
And we were working on a short week, a tight turnaround, because our recording schedule got a little thrown. And anytime that happens, we go back to our bag of tricks. We do Against Me. We do Alice in Chains. We do an old favorite we can talk off the cuff about. And few albums we can talk this well off the cuff, quite like Plans, Death Cab For Cutie. So what a blast.
I feel like we can talk about this one off the cuff so well that I'm honestly surprised it took us this long to do an entire show on this album.
Well, and it was so great because you and I were talking. We're like, let's just do the fail-safe with the short week. We always do that. Let's do Hot Fuss by the Killers. And then you came in like a day or two later and you were like, hard pivot. What if we did Plans? And I remember immediately I turned into the guy from I Think You Should Leave. Absolutely do it. Like, it's embedded in group lore.
It is. It's an incredible album. I mean, I think Death Cab has produced a lot of great content. I love Death Cab For Cutie. There's very little of their discography that I don't like and that I wouldn't actively listen to. I mean, basically everything right up until their kind of more recent stuff, and even a lot of that is pretty good. But Plans, to me, is their crowning achievement. This is their magnum opus. This is one of the best albums ever, in my opinion. It's just like I can't find any part of it that I would take out, that I would be like, oh, it'd be better if this wasn't here. I don't know if there's any part of this that would be the case for.
And I'll be totally honest, revisiting it for the first time in a long time, there are some parts that kind of don't hit for me anymore the way that they used to, which isn't a referendum on the quality. It's just, this was very much an album of its time for where we were as a friend group and for where I was personally. Like, this was, a couple, not a generation, but, a couple years ahead of us. They had Elliott Smith. They had Jeff Buckley. We had Death Cab For Cutie.
Yeah.
So it was very much like a product of the fact that all my friends and I could enjoy it together. And it was the kind of music that spoke to me in 2005 when I was, 15 years old, which again is not to be like, it's music for 15-year-olds. It just was like the deepest shit that hit me the closest to home at that time. So we'll always have a very special place for that reason.
Yeah, it was, I mean, there's a few songs on here that just, I mean, Soul Meets Body. I was listening to that one just before we hopped on here. I Will Follow You Into the Dark. I mean, incredible. Crooked Teeth for me is wonderful. I mean, what Sarah said obviously is that's kind of the like dark horse best song on this album, the one that like people talk about the most. And then they end it with Stable Song, and it's just like the whole thing it's very, very emotional the whole way through, but the way that they produce this music, it's always got this hopeful little kind of tinge to it. It's really, really good.
Yeah, and it's a great balance. Like it's post emo, right? Like it's got kind of shades of emo to it, but not quite so. Like the angst has a little bit of a maturity to it. I think that's why, like, obviously when you're a teenager, you're in high school, you think you're more mature than you are, and you are growing. And this is an album that I think is perfect for that time in your life because it's not just like needlessly angsty like a lot of emo was, but it still gets to that core of like what it is to be an upset teenager. And it helps you relate to the material, and it also kind of pushes you forward because musically it's got way more to do with indie. Like I remember, I mean, maybe we don't need to like necessarily name drop people, but I remember there were people in the friend group who were like, oh, well, if we like this, let's check out the Postal Service. Let's check out
Hmm.
Iron and Wine. And it just kind of like pushed you out of your box because, like, right up until high school, I was pretty much rocking whatever was on the radio at the time.
Yeah.
Um, so this was like one of the real first forays into getting off the beaten path as well.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I listened to a ton of like Coheed. Obviously, by this point, if this was 2005, I've been listening to Coheed for a couple of years. Rise Against, like, I'd listen to Against Me at that point. Like, I was pretty deep into like some much more aggressive, like kind of harder stuff. That Death Cab for me would not have been something I don't think I would have considered. I'm really not sure why I got into this album or into Death Cab in the first place. I cannot remember. I could not tell you. But man, I mean, probably right about when I started smoking a lot more of the, those left-handed cigarettes. But for me, I think Death Cab just like opened up a whole new path, just like you were saying. It's just, there were so many other bands that I probably never would have given a fair shake to, or styles or genres of music without having got into Death Cab and really plans first. It's just a really incredible achievement, kind of what they did to my musical life.
Yeah, and I will be, again, totally honest. Transatlanticism and Plans are probably the real depth and breadth of my Death Cab experience for no
Hmm.
other reason than it's honestly Death Cab's fault because they opened me up to so many different things that I just kind of moved on.
Yeah.
I was just like, like it was like Dionysian appetites. I just went crazy, like
Hmm.
Templeton the Rat, just consuming indie music.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also think, and maybe it wasn't me and you, it could have been me and somebody else, but I remember buying Plans on CD the same day as somebody else in the group. I thought it was you, maybe not.
I think it wasn't it in Burlington
Yes, correct. Yep.
at the University Mall at the
At the
FYE.
University Mall at the FYE. Uh-huh. So it was you. So it was you.
God, core memory.
Wow.
Dang.
Fucking A.
Yeah. What a day. And I think, was that the day was I driving my dad's minivan?
That I don't remember, quite frankly. I want to say it was one of the, like, was Spike the green one? You
It
guys
could
all
have
had
been.
those. I can't
No,
remember the name
because
of the car.
2005, I would have still had, I think I still would have had the silver Ford Focus.
This, what'd you call it?
The silver bullet, baby.
Silver Bullet. And
Yeah.
those Hollywood nights.
Yeah. Like a freight train to hell.
Unreal.
Incredible
I thought
vehicles.
maybe it
The
was
Ford
the
Focus.
Bullet,
It's
but
all I've ever owned. I'm on my fourth one.
I don't know. I guess if we want to like dive into the content itself, and we didn't do our usual pick a couple songs, I feel like we can bounce around and
No.
just more like
Yes.
talk about it in the broad strokes. So I don't know. Did you have a specific thought off the top or anything? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just wondering if you.
No. So I was listening to Soul Meets Body just before we came on here, and that one I want to point out because I think, was this the first big single from the album, if I remember right?
What were the singles? Was it Crooked Teeth, Soul Meets Body, and I Will Follow You Into the Dark?
Yeah.
This actually brings up a good point. Who was the first person to get on the Death Cab tip in the group? Like, who got
I
you
don't
into
know.
it?
I want to say that I like maybe saw it on MTV. Like I remember the music video for this song, like, and I feel like I saw it, and it was one of those things like like Coheed was, or like the Silver Sun Pickups were, bands like that I saw for the first time on MTV, and I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? And I think this was one of the songs that did that. So I don't know if I was the first one or if I but that's where I remember seeing them first was on MTV.
You know who, and again, this is just turning into inside baseball, but you know who I know for a fact was into Death Cab for a while and may still be, is that old salty dog Rory,
Mm-hmm.
the man with the Grinch heart, because he played "I Will Follow You Into the Dark." He used to have a radio show in college, returning the favor, and he did "I Will Follow You Into the Dark," and I was running the Instant Messenger, the online chat that night. You would not believe how many ladies were like, "Who was doing that, and where can I find him?"
And he took advantage of none of it.
Exactly. Like a true gentleman. Like a real gentle sir.
Real Renaissance man.
Yeah, you know it. You know it. But yeah, I mean, and like, I guess in terms of like the musical content and the lyrical content, I like that this was an album, like it's in the title, Plans. And there's that line, plans are just like making a wish to Father Time, or something, paraphrasing horribly. But I like that as the concept for the album, especially, again, hitting us in the sweet spot of high school, because everything seems very big and intimidating. It's a wild, like your hormones are going nuts. Everything seems big and intimidating. You think you know everything. And then comes something that kind of like offers you a new perspective, which is like, you are so insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. The universe doesn't care about your plans, and you've got a hell of a lot to learn going forward, kid. So it's kind of like a sobering, when you're used to music that's just like, touch my hot body. You want this body? You better roll up with the correct attitude. You get done with that. And here's something that's like, no, you actually need to like think when you listen to music. Can't have fun all the time. It was sobering, and it was done in a really interesting way in terms of the music. It's that jangly kind of light indie sound, but then it had that kind of emo sensibility to the lyrics without being like totally self-pitying and off the wall. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it also had a lot to do with Ben Gibbard's voice. Like, he had a very like soothing voice. Like, it was a very nice register. And I think it was just, I don't know, it was very pleasant overall to listen to. And especially the way that it was just this acoustic guitar line, just this like really simple kind of picked pattern on the guitar. But the way it just had such a nice groove to it, and the lyrics were like, you had to, like you were saying, you had to think about them finally. I didn't really have music that really I ever had to do that. I think the most I'd ever had to think about anything was when I'd listen to Bob Dylan. It just because I thought about it didn't mean I got it. Right. This was the first thing that I like thought about and related to and understood, and it really, I think, opened up that entire world of music, that you can express yourself in a different way than just like aggression or anger. It was just something else. And I really liked finding something that kind of spoke to a little different sensibility, on the emotional spectrum.
And it was, again, I go back to the shared experience. It was something we all ended up relating to. It wasn't like, it's nice to have stuff that's personally meaningful to you. Again, I referenced Jeff Buckley. There's one song of his in particular, Lover, You Should Have Come Over. I almost don't want anyone else to like that song, because like when I listen to it, I'm like, he wrote this for me. Like, this is like tapping into like all kind. This is my song. Furthermore, he jacked this out of my mind. He knew that a song like this existed in my unconscious mind, and he stole it, a la Hot Tub Time Machine, and he made it. But now I get to enjoy it. Nobody else gets to. So there are some experiences that are like very, very personal, and you don't need other people to share in them. But this was one we were really fortunate. It resonated with all of us, and we could all enjoy it together. And like, that's the shit you all like. We talk about plans and if you want God to laugh, tell him your plans. being the theme of the album, like, you get older, you realize more and more that's true, but you will always be able to fall back on the memories you made with something like this. So I hadn't listened to this in a long time. It was a big ass nostalgia bomb, and I forgot how much the songs that I love, I really, really fucking love, and how, like, in my DNA they are now. I don't know which songs those were for you, but I got a couple.
Yeah, so this, I mean, Soul Meets Body was one of them, just because of that little guitar riff. Another one, different names for the same thing. Just the way, because you go, so you go from Marching Bands of Manhattan, which is like not a fast or upbeat song, but like has a nice beat to it. And then you go into Soul Meets Body, and that's a, kind of a really peppy indie, like kind of happy sounding song. Summer Skin, kind of going down a little bit more, but then you get to different names for the same thing. And I really just didn't, this was where it really hit me, like the emotional weight of this album, and I didn't really understand it till now. Because I was like, wait, this song is like not at all what I really would have considered something that I would listen to, like not at all like anything I would listen to. And then it's like he goes through all these things that are like all these very relatable moments and like emotions. And he's like, they're all just different names for the same thing. Like everybody feels these things, no matter what makes you feel that way. The root thing is that we all feel that way. And it's like this connection in sadness that everybody has. And it's a very powerful moment. And I think it's a pretty like overall very short song.
Yes.
But for me, it's just like, I don't know. It's just really beautiful and spoke to me in a different way than most anything else had at that point.
Well, and you're right. So much is done with so little. It's verse 1, verse 2, refrain. And like that carries the entire song. There's we always talk about when the emotion of the instrumentation can carry the song and the lyrics enhance your understanding of that feeling. It's a similar thing to movies. And whether or not your mileage may vary with whether or not you agree with this, but there is a certain school of thought with people that say if you're watching a movie and you can mute it and still know what's going on, that's a really well-made movie. And that's kind of like the music stands on its own and it's enhanced by these lyrics, and they're not over the top. They're not super on the nose. They're not super esoteric. It's just like, again, when you're 15, I'll keep going back to that. When you're 15 and you come upon this, you don't want something that's incomprehensible and you don't want something that insults your intelligence. You want something you can relate to. And this is put in like the plainest terms, but with some really, really beautiful music behind it. And that's like the Death Cab special.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So they kind of like were stepping into their own, because their early Death Cab was, like what we have the facts and we're voting yes. Something about airplanes. Early Death Cab had a lot of like, they were kind of like a garage rock band. They sounded more like Wilco than they sounded like, Death Cab ended up sounding. And then they got to the photo album and Transatlanticism. And those two was where they kind of started to stretch it out a little bit. They started to really kind of, use the whole room, so to speak. And then Plans hit. And it's very atmospheric. It's very orchestral as opposed to like a rock band like it was before. And to me, it's just like such a growth in sound and like lyrical content compared to, and this was the first thing I'd listened to by Death Cab, but I've gone through and listened to everything else extensively. And this would like Plans was just such a leap ahead of anything. It was the culmination of everything they'd been building towards at that point. And it was just, for me, it's just like almost a perfect album because of that.
Well, and you want to talk about a perfect song to go right into I Will Follow You Into the Dark. I mean, that was at the time the saddest shit I had ever heard in my life. Perfectly executed, just vocals and acoustic guitar. That's all you need. Like the lyrics, so well written, so well sung. I mean, it is a it's ostensibly a song about love on an album that is like heavily steeped in themes of death, but it still has like a darkness and a sadness to it. I mean, the chorus of heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. So, where do you actually belong? If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. Like, you're not alone. If there's no other place in the world for you to go and you're doomed to like kind of wander forever, I'm right there with you. And that's like a powerful notion of love, especially again in high school. I know it's not targeted to teens or high school, but it's our personal relationship to it, right? That's an especially powerful message to get in high school when you are forming your most important friendships, and as it turns out, the ones that last a lifetime. You and I have been friends for fucking how many years now? Almost
More. I've been friends with you for longer in my life than I wasn't friends with you.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's like, that was kind of my awakening to like, oh shit, beside your parents, people can care about you so much that they would like skip out on heaven or hell or whatever else to travel down the road with you. And that's such an insanely profound thing to get hit with as a youngin'.
Yeah. And listening to this song, I mean, again, like I don't even know how many, like probably a couple hundred times I've heard this song. I don't even know. A zillion. It's there. Yeah. There is there is no limit. The limit does not exist on how many times I've listened to this song. But I hadn't listened to it since I was in Seattle either. So it was, it'd been, Seattle went beginning of last month. And so I hadn't heard this, and it just like, not only did I get a nostalgia bomb for, back in 2005 when we first got this album and first like really dove in, but I also got one for, a month ago in Seattle. And just like, cause there was one day that I walked over to get breakfast and Marla wanted to sleep in. So I walked over to get myself some breakfast just, a few blocks away, but I just kind of took the long way, and it was like raining as it does in Seattle. And I had my headphones in and this song, and I was like, I'm going to listen to Death Cab while I'm in Seattle. I was like, how much more fitting could this be? And it gave me that same feeling. I just like felt this song just feels like Seattle, the same way that any Alice in Chains or Nirvana song ever did. Like this whole Death Cab album just feels like Seattle too.
Yeah, and the last time, admittedly, I was in Seattle was actually before we moved to Texas, because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to go to at that point. It was an arbitrary thing to throw Seattle in the mix. I don't know why. So, admittedly, that was the last time I went, and I have only kind of vague memories about Seattle. But what you're saying is that it speaks to like this song in particular speaks to sense memory in such because it does it invades your brain. It you can listen to it in a million different situations, and it like in that moment you'll go, oh shit, I remember the last time I listened to this, I was blah blah blah, and then you listen to it in Seattle, and then the next time you listen to it, you're nostalgic for Seattle. The next time we listen to it, we're gonna think about when we talked about it on the podcast. Like, it's a song that like makes sure that it stays anchored in your life. You can't listen to it too many times. That's kind of a rare feat for a song. I burn myself out on songs sometimes. This is not one of them.
No, and again, I think that has a lot to do with Ben Gibbard's voice. Just a very, very soothing, pleasant voice. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He just knows how to sing really well. And I don't know. Like, you can't say there's anything wrong with that song. Like, it's almost a perfect song. It's just one of those that's going to stick with you forever.
And it's so simple. Yeah. And it's like, it's, again, on an album filled with messages that are profound in their simplicity. Like, Someday You Will Be Loved is a good example. I mean, that's a very simple premise. A girl loves Ben Gibbard. Ben Gibbard does not love the girl, but he's trying to be comforting in his own way. I mean, I'm going to stop apologizing for the high school thing. Like, again, I've said it's my way into this album. But you learn about that as a teenager, like love is quite often unrequited. And the way it's depicted on these like teen dramas is often how it goes, love triangles and stuff like that, because it's all new. You're exploring all of this. So just because you love someone doesn't mean you're fated to be. And I don't want to say teenagers can't fall in love, but I think maybe concepts of love change over time. So this was written by an adult, but a teenager could take it and, again, like, feel very seen. I've been in unrequited love a million times since I was 15. So it again speaks to that staying power where it hits you in a moment where you didn't know you could feel this way and you didn't know this could happen, and you return to it more and more throughout your life and realize it's still relevant.
Like, that's so I think the reason for that is that he just can write so well and express so well the emotions of the situation that he's writing about, that it doesn't matter like how good the lyrics are, and they are great. I mean, like, I'm just reading through these again, and I'm like just going along, like the music in my head, just like reading along with these lyrics. I'm like, damn, like it's just so good. I cannot pretend that I felt any regret, because each broken heart will eventually mend. And as the blood runs red down the needle and thread, someday you will be loved. I mean, like, I'm 18 years old, like getting hit like a hammer with this stuff. Because I mean, I don't know if any of the rest of you remember what it was like when you were 18 years old, but there's a lot of hormones, a lot of emotions going on. Life's pretty crazy because you got a small world. And when anything changes in that small world, it is a big upsetting thing. I mean, it just is what it is. And this album hit us like right at that moment when we needed some help in like navigating that stuff. And I think that's why it was so important. And maybe other people didn't like connect to this one the same way that we did, if they didn't have that sort of point in their lives when this one hit us in a similar place that it hit them. But it's just like, it did hit us then. And so it will always be in that like pantheon of classic albums. And just not only for the friend group, but for just me in general.
Yeah. And it's like you said, like there can be those rushes of emotion, especially when you're young, but it doesn't change when you're older. Like, I always love the chorus. You'll be loved like you never have known, and the memories of me will seem like bad dreams, like a series of blurs, like I never occurred. I mean, again, that's not being too esoteric, and it's not like, you'll get over it, I'm not that great. It's done in a very elegant way that's accessible, and it gets to the heart of the matter. You think about that, like, hey, I don't love you, but that doesn't preclude you being loved somewhere down the road. And there have been a lot of times in my life, especially as an adult, where I go, I am destined to wind up alone. It's that self-pity thing. I'll cut myself a little slack because I'm not the only one that experienced that. But I've definitely had those moments of self-pity where you're like, I'll never find anyone. I'm unlovable. Nobody could ever feel about me the way I feel about this person. I'll die without this person. Why won't this work? Like, to this day, you can experience those feelings. And, like, this was an important album in putting that kind of stuff into context. It's not just like emo would be like, you don't love me, what a tragedy. Post-emo is like, let's kind of add some context to this. And
let's be adults about this.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. This also helped, I think, maybe show me a little bit about what, an adult way to handle things is. And this was one of those songs where it was like, okay, well, it's all about perspective, right? It's all about whether if you're going to, like, you don't owe people your well-being and your emotions and everything. So if you can't fully commit to somebody, it's better to just like let them go and try to find that with somebody else. And I feel like looking at it that way, it just helps you, if you're in that situation, to know how to handle that and understand that it's like, it might really suck now, but this is temporary, and you're both going to move on and probably find plenty of happiness in other places.
And then those lessons, there's all these lessons to be learned, sort of like segue into Crooked Teeth, because it was another, unless I'm crazy, it was one of the singles.
Yes, I think it was. Well, I remember the video I think it like would morph. It had a city skyline that morphed into like crooked teeth, like literal, like just like the song says.
All right, then confirmed.
Yeah.
This is some of the best wordplay on the album is in this song. I built you a home in my heart with rotten wood and it decayed from the start. I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
is a kind of a continuation of Someday You Will Be Loved in the sense that it's like Ben Gibbard is trapped in a kind of cold, passionless relationship, at least on his
Mm-hmm.
side. And he's accepting, like, you would be kind of an asshole to stay in this situation and lead this person on when you know you're not, like, really in it. Like, you can't find nothing at all when there was nothing there all along, is the chorus. And that's very
Mm-hmm.
true. Like, there's a tendency for people, I learned this one the hard way. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings, so you just kind of grit your teeth and get through something that you know isn't right. And it, like, you prolong it, and it's so much fucking worse at that point. That is a shitty lesson to learn, but it's an inevitable part of all of our development. Like, anyone that pretends they've been great to every partner they've ever had, I think is not being honest with themselves. And songs like this are a cautionary tale, but
Mm-hmm.
also like a reminder, hey, we all did it. It's not cool. Don't fuck up again. The little wisdom that carries through the whole album. And it's
Mm-hmm.
done in such a jaunty way. If you can't find nothing at all,
Seriously,
it's
it's so
like,
catchy.
yeah, it is. It's just like so, like,
Yeah.
it swings. It's very like floaty and bubbly, but then you really think about the lyrical content and you're like, I feel like an asshole for dancing to this.
Yeah. Like, I braved treacherous streets and kids strung out on homemade speed, and we shared a bed in which I could not sleep at all. Like, it's just very depressing lyrics. Like, very, very depressing. It's the classic like upbeat song with depressing lyrics that unless you're like really paying attention, you can get out of this that it's a happy little danceable indie tune if you just want to leave out the lyrics. But the second you listen to those, you're like, oh, this might possibly be like the most depressing song on the album. Like there's no happiness to be found here.
For me, the most depressing song on the album, and also the most beautiful, and the one that I get the most out of, even over I Will Follow You Into the Dark, is What Sarah Said. And I would like to, for anyone that doesn't know the
Oh
album,
yes.
read the first verse or the first part of, because it's kind of like unconventionally structured, the first chunk, because this is not just some of the best Death Cab lyrics, but some of the most like honest, brutal lyrics I've heard in general. So it says, and it came to me then that every plan is a tiny prayer to Father Time. That's the thing I was talking about earlier. As I
Mm-hmm.
stared at my shoes in the ICU that reeked of piss and 409, and I rationed my breaths as I said to myself that I'd already taken too much today, as each descending peak on the LCD took you a little farther away from me. The imagery there is like shockingly relatable, shockingly stark. We've all had the misfortune of being in the hospital when a loved one is in dire straits,
Mm-hmm.
and this even just that opening line, but the whole song itself just like launches you into that headspace. You have to stop, you have to meditate on it, and it's done in such a like, you think a line like it reeked of piss couldn't be beautiful, but it's like beautiful in its brutality and its
Mm-hmm.
honesty. And like, I remember the first couple times I had a tendency to kind of like gloss over this because it was sad when I was younger. Couldn't really handle this one, but I hammered this one on this recent go through.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah.
it is a beautiful fucking
Oh yeah.
difficult song.
It is. Just the question that it poses, right? And I think that's the biggest thing on this album is it made you, I don't know, it made you consider what you were bringing to this album as well. It made you consider the emotional things that were happening in your world. It made you think about the ways you were reacting to all that stuff. And then they put something like What Sarah Said towards the end, and they were like, here's a little perspective for you that none of it matters. The only thing that matters is finding the ones that you're going to stick close to, that you're going to want to be around until the very end, and that you want to be there for until the very end. And I think that's one thing that just, will always stand out to me about this song. And this is one that I've listened to. I mean, it's one of those ones that's just such a sad song, but when you're sad, that's what you want. I think there was a study that some psychology association or something did, where they were like, it's more beneficial to your mental health if you're sad, to listen to sad songs. Like, the conventional wisdom was listen to something happy to like snap you out of it. But it's really just about like feeding that in that moment to get you to like feel it all the way through. And the song is just like the catalyst to doing that. That's what is more likely to get you back up to level or into a happy place than trying to snap you into a happy song.
Because I've tried to do that before, snap in a happy song, and it ruins the happy song. Because there may be something inadvertently in there. Like, if we look at it through the context instead of like death to a breakup, if there's something that's like directly relevant to your situation, that song is fucking dead to you at that point. Even once you're like over it and you've moved on, no sir. And I think that it's totally correct. You push through by listening to a sad song. You have to feel those emotions. You have to sit with them, and that really can't get ruined for you. It's honestly like that weird opposite, where if I'm sad and I listen to a happy song, I'll hate the happy song. If I'm sad and I listen to a sad song, I gain a deeper appreciation of it. Even when I'm not sad, I can go, oh fuck, this is a like brutally sad song. Someone put one on the other day. I don't remember where it was, if it was camp or where we were, but someone put on just like a devastatingly sad song, and I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we listening to this? And then I stopped, and I'm like, oh, right, because it's beautiful. I see.
Yep. It's just, I mean, there's so many songs that are like that are just so unbelievably sad, but what else can you do but just appreciate like that the time and place when those songs are going to come through for you? There's nothing in the world more important than that. Like in that moment, there's probably nothing in the world more important than that song that's going to perfectly match the mood that you need to hear right then. And I feel like this album is full of songs that can be that for you. And that's, I think, one of the best things you could possibly ever say about a body of work like this.
That's, and obviously your depth and breadth is greater than mine, but to me, that's Death Cab in a nutshell, is making you feel less sad about sadness. It's being very real about, like, they have celebratory stuff as well, but it's being very real about the difficulties in life, especially on this album, and not pulling its punches. But in the end, it does help you make sense of your emotions. And it's like we're talking about, sit in the sadness, feel the sadness, use this as your compass to get through that sadness, and remember how this felt. It's part of being human. So it's great to, in summation, on my end anyway, it's great to have albums like this, because they really are an anchor and a roadmap, and they can get you through the tough times.
They certainly can. And this is not really a review one. This is one of our just kind of deep dive on something that we love. But if you haven't gone and listened to this album, go and listen to it. Stream it. Go do it. Like, I need you to go listen to this album, because if you like our show and you tend to like listen to the music that we talk about on the show, Death Cab for Cutie is like instrumental in both of our tastes in music. So when I say go listen to this one, like, do it, and know that I mean that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Ringing endorsement. Ringing stream it. You're exactly right. It's not a review. It's a deep dive. But, if you're asking me, should you listen to it? Absolutely do it.
Yes. It is so, so good. You will thank us, and please do. You can let us know if there's any like Death Cab songs that you love. You can tell us in the comments. Like, maybe we can do another piece of content on that if you really love Death Cab. I'll talk about Death Cab all goddamn day. So if you want to see more, it'll be more of an excuse for me to talk about them. So please do. Get us in the YouTube, on our Instagram, on our Twitter. just kind of wherever you follow us, make sure you like and subscribe so that we pump out a lot of content every single week. We got at least 2 things every single week. Most weeks, I think, is 3 now. I think is the podcast episode and 2 videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're cranking this stuff out as fast as we can. And it seems to be getting a good response. So keep letting us know, keep liking, keep subscribing. It's all getting us towards the goal of like having a bigger platform to talk about this stuff and just having a lot more fun with it as we go along here.
Yeah, and for reference, we are sitting pretty at 293. Wow, I fucked that up. 293 subscribers as of this recording on Wednesday the 13th. And that's just going to go up. I mean, you're going to put a new reaction video out, and we're going to get people. That's just what happens. Like, we're in a really good spot right now. And as a reminder, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube already, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform and not on YouTube, where we seem to do our best business, you can go to youtube.com/C/out on that line. Bing, da, ding, ding, boom. And you can subscribe, turn your notifications on, like the videos, leave comments, engage with us. It's not just 2 dudes whistling down an empty hallway anymore. There's a community. I am starting to recognize names of some of the regulars in the comments. So we got something springing up. So come join us.
Yeah, there's some dude named Brandon Martin.
Yeah,
that's in there all the time.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he seems like a total weirdo. So
he seems like a hardo, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. Well, so we'll say, Brandon, I guess you're okay so far, but like you're towing the line. So watch the line.
Yeah, you're sus,
buddy.
Dude. Yeah, you're pretty sus, but thank you for your support.
Yeah, as always.
As always.
I guess. Well, Alex, if there's nothing else from you this week, go listen to Death Cab Plans. Go listen to all the Death Cab. Just start right at the beginning, right like when they were a garage rock band. Like, go all the way through. Just do it. Do yourselves a favor, but especially Plans. Until next time.